and tell their stories and build up. Palestinians are not numbers. We are not numbers. I would like to introduce Ahmed now to speak now. Definitely recognize the Zanena, the butter. You know, Zanena is a drone that is going to be over your head all the time. 10 years ago, I was in Palestine, in Gaza, and the whole time, 24/7, the Nana is above your head.
UN reports suggest more like 120, I say died, have been targeted and murdered by the Israeli state.
And perhaps you standing in front of the BBC is a message today to all the mainstream media. Enough with 75 years of defaming the Palestinian legitimate struggle.
مهم هذا التضامن من الصحفيين والإعلاميين البريطانيين من أمام مقر هيئة الإذاعة والتلفزيون البريطانية من أجل التعبير عن تضامنهم مع الشعب الفلسطيني ومع الصحفيين الفلسطينيين الذين تتقصدهم آلة الحرب والإبادة الإسرائيلية كما شاهد العالم خلال الأشهر السابقة وعلى مدار السنوات والعقود. إسرائيل تتقصد أصوات الحق كما فعلت في حرب الإبادة في غزة وكما فعلت في شيرين أبو عاقلة قبلها، وهي تاريخها أسود بهذا الإطار، وأيضا هو تظاهر ضد الإعلام التقليدي الغربي حتى يكون محايد وينقل الحقيقة.
My family were in their home sheltering. They thought that Deir al-Balah was a safe area because it's in the south of the Gaza Strip. But then Israel bombed my home. They killed my father. They killed my 2 brothers. They killed my 3 sisters. And they killed 14 of my nieces and nephews who are all children. They also killed my cousins and their families.
I'm protesting here today at the headquarters of the BBC in London, and with me tens of other journalists and media workers who have gathered here today to send a message to the Western media that your coverage is no longer trusted. Over the past 75 years, the Western media coverage on Palestine has been inadequate, and they have portrayed the Palestinians as terrorists. They have demonized the Palestinian people. They have dehumanized the Palestinian people. So we're here today to tell them that this is no longer accepted, and we are protesting here today in order to send a message to the Western media in London and everywhere, in London, in Europe and in America, that this complicity against the Palestinian people is no longer accepted, and we will continue protesting until they eventually change course. The past 4 months from now, Israel has targeted more than 120 journalists in Gaza. They killed 120 Palestinian journalists in Gaza. Not only themselves, but they also targeted their families, their children, their colleagues and their loved ones. And we haven't seen any action from the BBC and other media outlets here in the UK. We have expected a lot from the Western media to stand in solidarity with their colleagues in Palestine who have been working tirelessly in order to send the message to shed light on what's actually going on in Gaza. But unfortunately, the Western media hid this truth and hid this information, and they did not allow the truth to come out from Gaza. So we are frustrated of the Western media, and we are calling them to change now, because their complicity is costing lives in Gaza. It's costing live civilians, and it's costing journalists' lives.
But Israel's genocide against the Palestinian people is also an assault upon all of humanity and on the basic principles that enable us to live meaningful lives as human beings. When Israel destroys and targets organizing teach-ins, organising walkouts, media workers, cultural workers, academics, students, teachers, school children, health workers, all united, all rising up in a wave of solidarity, united by a simple message: stop the genocide, ceasefire now.
Abu Hamza. So I would like to ask you, if he's your friend and you used to tell him every day with his son name, how it would be when I say Salamu Alaikum Abu Hamza every day.
I'm a British journalist, and I wanted to come here for one reason only, really, which is to pay homage and respect and acknowledge the incredible sacrifice.
And in particular, here we are at the BBC, one of the most famous centres of journalism in the world, and I have to say that the funding by the reporting by the BBC of the astonishing decision by the British government to defund UNRWA, the one organisation which is bringing some form of hope of just getting getting food and medicine into the most desperate place currently in the world, and the BBC's failure even to lead the news on that story and tell the truth about it is it shames Britain, because actually what the BBC stands for is humanity, compassion, fairness and integrity. And here we are at one of the most famous places in world journalism, just outside the BBC, with the statue of George Orwell. And I do wish that the BBC would do much more to tell the truth about Gaza, and in particular, of course, about the sacrifice of the many journalists who've been killed. And they've been failing to tell that story.
Many of you are journalists now. When I joined this noble profession, and it was a noble profession, I joined back in 1976, and the BBC was held up as the gold standard of journalism. What the hell has happened in 5 decades is, I just don't know. But they have also been occupied, just like Palestine. They're in occupation now as well, by the boss class. You don't see the boss class on marches and demonstrations like this.
That our enemies as Palestinians were Israel and its backers and friends. What I didn't understand is that we have another enemy, which is the media. I came to this country when I was 9. The reason for us being here was the Nakba of 1948, which forced my family out of Jerusalem, where I was born. How is it that a settler colony like Israel imposed on an innocent people, the Palestinian people, how is it that Western states feel the urge to defend it, to kill so many people defending it, to arm it, to fund it, to protect it, to support it in every single diplomatic arena? How is that? What is that about? Isn't it time that we all asked ourselves, who needs Israel? And I really mean that. Who needs Israel?
We do ask that question.
And what I mean by that, who needs a settler colony which practices apartheid and which is now practicing genocide?
Which is they have to back Israel against the Palestinians. They cannot support a ceasefire because neither of the main parties do. The journalist John Pilger, who died only a few weeks ago, what did he say about the situation? He said, if you go for balance in an unbalanced situation, then you are siding with the oppressor. And that is what is going on here. They are siding with the oppressor over this question. And let's just look, people have referred to the ICJ judgment from the South African case, and good for the South Africans who know about apartheid, who actually decided to bring this case.
We're the people who agree with me are the vast majority of the country, and that's why it's so extraordinary to see this disconnect between the politicians, the political parties and the media, the mainstream media and the population. It's never been so acute. And I'll say this, the other thing, I'm an anti-Zionist Jew and I'm a journalist, and I'm proud of being a journalist. And the reason I became a journalist, and why almost everybody I've ever met
in 40 odd years of being a journalist, became journalist, is we wanted to speak truth to power.
My name's Naomi Wimborne Idrisi, and I'm the media officer of a group called Jewish Voice for Labour, one of an increasing number of Jewish organisations who are watching horrified at what's going on in Gaza. As a journalist, I'm here with colleagues from the National Union of Journalists and other groups to say that we are very dissatisfied with the narrative that the BBC in particular has been putting out for the benefit of the public in the UK. So they have a very distorted view. You get news bulletins which talk about Israel's war on Hamas. When the awful toll of death and destruction is described, they say, according to the Hamas-run ministry, and this sort of thing. They call into question the veracity of the Palestinian narrative, and they never ask the same questions of Israeli spokespeople.